Hi, this is Stephen Orr. We love getting your questions at Better Homes and Gardens, and one of the ones we get a lot is how to plant a planter or a container. It couldn't be easier, really. It's really simple, but there are a few things you need to think about while you're doing it. The first thing you need to do is pick a container. There are more options than ever. One of the big materials that you see more and more is resin or fiberglass. All sorts of faux versions of other materials. You have a faux ceramic in this one, you have faux concrete here, and you have a kind of a faux aged terracotta here. So all of these planters are great because they can get fairly large, and instead of becoming so heavy, the lightweight resin really allows you to move them. The size of your container is very important. For a mixed planting, you don't want to go below 12 inches for a couple of reasons. Pots that are below 12 inches, usually for just one kind of plant like an herb, and they're going to require a lot of watering every day, sometimes multiple times a day. A mixed planter is easier to care for. The larger the planter is, the less you have to do to it as far as watering. It can kind of sustain itself much more easily. I always like to have a theme for my planters, at least a color concept. And the color concept could be something where it's like playing off the color of the container, or it could be playing against the color of the container. There's all sorts of things you can do. For instance, in this white container, we're inspired obviously by the white planter, so we went with a white and pastel color arrangement of 5 different plants. Choosing an odd number of plants lets you position the plants in a way that feels a little more designed and less symmetrical. You don't want to have it look too formal, and picking an odd number of plants really does help make it more casual. We have Caladium, which is a small bulb. You can buy it as a bulb or you can buy it as a plant. A kind of euphorbia that blooms all summer with these little white starry flowers. We also have a tuberous begonia that's pale pink here, another white tuberous begonia. One other thing, we have a dichondra or silver ponyfoot that spills out the side. For the composition, there's this kind of tried and true formula that people use that's called thriller, filler, spiller. The thriller is the one big dramatic plant that you put in the pot. It's also the tallest usually, or the most dramatic, or the most unusual. In this case, it would be the Caladium that's got a great pattern on the leaves. The filler would be the begonias and the euphorbia. And then the spiller would be the thing that trails off the side, and that would be this dichondra. So this dichondra is a really great spiller. This is a young one here, so it'll keep growing and get longer and longer. But all of these plants will do very happily here all summer long. Also, when you're picking your plants, you want to think about plants that grow well together. These are all shade planters. All these plants do well in shade. Shade can be tricky because it's harder to get a lot of flowers. You do need to spend more time thinking about leaf color and form and ways to brighten up the shade. This white planter does that really well. So what you have in this one is you have the addition of a conifer, this little evergreen here, which is going to provide a nice shape to it and kind of a topiary effect. And then you have fillers with asparagus fern, hosta, even a vegetable like that beautiful artichoke with those great serrated leaves. And then you have this creeping jenny or lysimachia that's hanging over the edge. It's a mixture of annuals, perennials, and even a shrub in one container. If any of these get out of hand, you can just move them out and either move them into another pot or move them into the garden. One way to deal with the shade is to have these beautiful light colors, but there's another way, which is the one behind me, which is to go really dramatic and dark. A bunch of different colors of purple and brown mixed in with some silver and a little bit of blue. So this container has a couple of perennials in it. It has a dark chocolate colored astilbe. It also has a ligularia, which is this beautiful plant here, heuchera, a nice coleus, a Japanese painted fern, and then a lobelia that's spilling out as the spiller. If you're a little bit confused about how much shade or sun you actually have, keep in mind what side of the house you're on. So a north side of the house garden or spot will be the least sunny. South side will be more sunny. East and west will get sun, but in the morning or the afternoon. Morning sun tends to be cooler. Evening sun tends to be warmer because you're getting all that afternoon heat. So that's one way to think about it. Also, 4 hours or less of sun a day is considered shady or part shade, and then more than 6 hours of sun is considered sunny, and then that middle area is kind of part shade, part sun. Kind of like when we're dealing with cloudy, partly cloudy. Same thing with the weather. In sun, you have a lot more options as far as flowers. You can get a lot more flowers in the sun in general. You don't have to rely as much on leaf color and pattern, but you still need to keep it in mind because that's what really will help keep the container looking great all season long as the flowers come and go. We were really inspired on this container by the glaze on it. It has a really great bronze glaze on a terracotta planter. The glaze yielded this really warm color scheme with a variegated coleus, also a copperleaf plant, which is another annual, and a sun-loving begonia. The thriller is a canna, which is a bulb that you can plant every summer if you want, or over winter, and also a sweet potato vine. Next, we're going to show you how to plant up a container, and it sounds pretty simple, but you do start at the bottom and work your way up. There's a few things you need to think about. The first is drainage. When I'm planting something this size, I only think about just covering the hole with a piece of broken pottery or a piece of old brick or even a pebble or a stone. You can layer a layer of gravel if you're putting something in here like lavender that likes really good drainage, and then you fill the rest with soil. If you're working with a really large pot, you really don't want to fill the whole thing with soil because, number one, you don't need all that root space. You only need about this much root space, a foot or so, maybe a foot and a half at the most for a large plant. And what you're trying to do is both conserve the amount of potting soil you have to buy, but also keep it a little lighter. You can buy these plastic, they're kind of artificial floors. You can put that in the bottom of a round container where it catches, and that way you'll have airspace below and soil above. So these are nice to look out for if you're looking for an easy way to save room in your pots. And also, people have been using leftover styrofoam packing peanuts to fill in the bottom of a very large container. You have to make sure they're not biodegradable because those will just melt over time. You want to use the styrofoam. And those will also get packed down, so once in a while you need to pull the whole thing out and use new ones. And we all order things online, so you tend to have those lying around. And easiest of all, you can just use any of the pots that you plant in. Let's say you had a larger pot and you're working with a larger planter and you want to take up some space, just turn this upside down once you've used it, and that'll take up some of the space that would otherwise be soil. So we're going to plant this pot in the same way we planted the others, trying to pick kind of an odd mix of plants. We're going with a color scheme inspired by the yellow pot, so we're going with these sunset colors. We'll start with a canna. This is another tall plant that works out really well, and it'll require the most root room, so that one I put in first because it'll be the deepest that we plant. Then I'm going to think about my fillers. We have a few options here. I really like this salmon colored salvia. It's a nice soft color. Salvias are often bright red, and this one's a nice color called saucy coral. Sometimes, I said use odd numbers, but this reads like one plant, so I'm going to count it as one, even though I might be using 2 or 3. If I wanted to pack this in and have it ready to look great for a party, I might put all 3 in, or I might just put 1 or 2 to let it grow in. It depends on how instantaneous you want it to look ready to go. After these nice salmon-colored salvias, I'm also going to use this really bright orange firecracker plant. It's a kind of Cufea. It'll be tall, but it's kind of delicate looking, so you can put it in the middle or off to the side a little bit, and it'll be a little bit see-through because it doesn't ever get that massive or fill in. So I'm putting it kind of not dead center. I would never put the tallest plant in the middle. It just makes things too symmetrical. So after the firecracker plant, I'm going to use this lantana. It is a very heat-tolerant plant. In fact, most of these plants here are. This is a great container to plant early in the summer. It might be the last planter standing in your garden in late August when it's really hot, because all these plants love the heat. So as you're planting these, another one of these salvias, I kind of loosen the pot by doing this. It helps if the plant's a little bit tight, it'll help loosen it. And I don't want to tug on the plant itself. I want to let it fall out so I'm not damaging the stem. And then these roots, this is a really healthy amount of roots. You can tell that this plant is not pot bound. It hasn't been in here very long, but these are all new roots that are touching the side of the container, which means it's ready for more room. And when I'm planting it, I just tickle the roots a little bit. Supposed to let them know that they can expand. I don't know if I've ever scientifically seen that proven, but we all do it. So once I have this arranged, one thing I'm doing is kind of moving it around to see how it looks from different angles, see if there's any gaps. What I'm going to do last is put in the spiller, which is the plant that's going to go over the edge of the pot. And especially these sweet potato vines, they grow all summer. They love the heat, and they also really will spill. They can get, a yard long. So one way when you're growing this plant to keep it kind kind of more suitable for a pot is to just snip it back as it's growing. Just pinch back the tips, and that'll make it fill out and not just be one long vine. So we've left this one a little less planted so that it can grow in over the summer. As I said, this is the way you would do it if you're doing it to grow for a full effect in about a week or two. If you want to pack it in, you can go ahead and do that, but be prepared to edit it as you go along. So that's all you need to do to plant this beautiful, dramatic container that's going to last all the way till frost. Like, comment, and subscribe for more from Better Homes and Gardens.